Today we are going to be talking about two things that, to me, go together like peanut butter and jelly, and I'm talking about Freemasonry and Kabbalah.
It's a classic pairing, although Peter, some people think that's a pretty strange sandwich. One is a fraternity known for pancake breakfasts and secret handshakes, and the other is an ancient, mysterious system of Jewish mysticism. How do they actually fit together?
Well, that's exactly what we're here to find out. For a long time, the link between them has been buried under a mess of misconceptions, magic, alchemy, outdated information, and we're here to find a spiritual key to our symbols that make sense for the 21st century.
Kabbalah is an operating system for navigating existence.
That might be a good way to think of it, as an operating system. It's been an important application in my life, and that's why I wanted to share it.
How did you become interested in Kabbalah in the first place?
Well, thank you for asking. That is an interesting story. I was actually looking for old Bibles. I had become curious about different translations, how and where they differed. And I was looking around in an old bookstore that used to be here right around the corner from where I live, and I found an old copy of Morals and Dogma. I'd never heard of it before, but I was intrigued by the book, and my wife encouraged me to buy it, so I did. And that book actually exposed me to both Kabbalah and Freemasonry.
Is that when you became a Freemason?
No. I waited a number of years. I was seriously interested in Freemasonry for 10 or 12 years, maybe, before I joined. Finally, I reached a point in my personal studies that I felt I had gone as far as I could go on my own, and what I really wanted was a mentor. So I went to the Masonic Lodge in my town and introduced myself, and I became a Mason a few months later.
Did you find a mentor there?
Well, yeah, I sure did. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I found a bunch of great guys. Their reputation for being friendly and generous was well deserved, exactly what I expected. I got no sense, however, that anyone was going to teach me much about the peculiar things that I was interested in, which were symbolism, particularly religious symbolism, and even more specifically, unconventional interpretations of religious symbolism. I didn't find that. That's really my main inspiration for writing the first book. I feel like Masonry made a promise a long time ago, and now it's struggling to keep it.
That's a potentially heavy indictment. What promise is being broken? Is there a specific symbol the lodge failed to explain to you? What was the missing piece?
Well, there have been more than one symbol, many actually, that weren't really explained to me. I had to find my own explanations for a number of symbols. I couldn't even list them all, and some I wouldn't even discuss in a forum like this. The promise I was referring to is the promise to be a place for all adherents to, quote, that religion upon which all agree. This was always going to be something that required changing with the times, and at some point, Freemasonry lost the recipe for how to do that.
In a world more philosophically fragmented than ever, what does that religion in which all agree look like in 2026? If you had to rewrite the lost recipe for that universal religion, is Kabbalah the secret ingredient?
Well, I'd say it's the recipe for changing with the times that was lost. Freemasonry has to do something fundamental. It has to look at its symbols, in particular those which are overtly religious, and interpret them to be meaningful to modern hearts and minds. Kabbalah is just an excellent model for how that can be done.
To a modern, reasonable, curious person who walks into a lodge today and sees a Bible, for example, how do you explain those overtly religious icons so they don't see a 17th century dogma, but something not out of place in the 21st century?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. You're doing a great job, by the way. Anyway, I would explain that in a Masonic context, the Bible is a symbol, not necessarily of Christianity or Judaism, but of something else. In my book, I explain how I interpret the Bible to symbolize the law. The universe is governed by rules, rules that can't be broken. These rules existed before the creation of the universe, and the activity of the entire world and everything in it has been conducted according to these rules since the beginning of time. So the Bible symbolizes these rules, whether we belong to a traditional religion or we have a different, perhaps secular view. This is something that we can all agree on. Existence is governed by unbreakable law.
Human beings are notorious for trying to break unbreakable laws. They act against nature and their own best interests all the time. How does Kabbalah help a Mason identify where they are out of sync with the law?
That's another really good question. I would say that Kabbalah is helpful in two ways. One is not really unique to Kabbalah. It's a characteristic of mysticism or really any symbolic system. Kabbalah provides labels for subtle ideas and gives you a place to focus your thoughts. Even if the label is imperfect, which it almost always is, it still gives some way to think about the impossible, the infinite, the eternal. Our minds deal in concrete units, concepts. So even if we want to think about infinity, we have to do it using finite thoughts. So the first way that Kabbalah helps you identify an imperfection is by giving you a way to imagine perfection, which, like infinity, is only an idea. It can never exist in reality. And the second way that it's helpful is by giving an example, that is, providing a model for how symbolism can be used to reinterpret anything, any scripture, any work of literature, art, music, any scientific fact or observation. Literally, how to interpret anything to have meaning and how to see beauty and perfection in everything. And so by providing this example, it doesn't just show how it can be done, but it also says it's okay to do it. It gives you permission to be very creative. So eventually the world begins to look different to you, and you see reminders and signs in the simplest things. It becomes like a guide.
Creativity can be a double-edged sword. If you give yourself permission to see what you believe, how do you ensure that your creative reinterpretation is actually leading you closer to truth and not just leading you into a hall of mirrors where you only see what you want to see?
Man, that's another really good question. This is, in a way, what brought me to Freemasonry. I saw plenty of the thing that you're asking about. People sharing their interpretations of symbols, which seemed weird or silly to me, or in some cases were just not aligned with what I believe to be true. There was something unbelievable about what I was reading or hearing. I wasn't conflicted, I just rejected it like anything else I couldn't believe. So first I have to make clear, nobody knows the complete truth. The best we have are our beliefs about what's true. Though we should always remember our beliefs may be flawed or incomplete, belief is still the only truth we have. But this is the point. Symbols have to represent something to you. They have to represent a concept or an idea that you actually believe. This creates a problem when a person doesn't know what they believe. And we all have gaps in our beliefs, questions that may have just never occurred to us. For example, a person might say, I believe in God, and then I might ask them, what do you believe about God? And then this is where you find the gaps in your beliefs, in the questions you can't answer or have never thought about. In those places, wherever you have gaps in your beliefs, I can't give you a symbol to represent those missing beliefs. So in those cases, you're not looking for a symbol, you're looking for something to believe. And there's a big difference. So using the explanation I gave of the Bible, I said it represented the laws of the universe. And if you believe that the universe is governed by laws, then I was sharing with you a symbol of that belief. However, if you don't believe that the universe is governed by laws, then I'm asking you to accept not just my symbol, but my belief. In one case, you easily accept it. In the other case, you probably don't.
Have you found any Masonic symbols that actually filled a gap in your beliefs? Has a symbol forced you to change your mind about what is true, rather than just confirming what you already knew?
That's an interesting question, because in a very technical way, a symbol doesn't teach anything per se. A symbol may just, from its appearance, inspire a thought, which leads to a new realization, and you may then connect the new thought or realization to the symbol. But without such a connection, without you saying, this symbolizes this idea to me, without that, a symbol doesn't have an inherent meaning. It has a meaning to me because I give it a meaning. So symbols don't teach, people teach, and they use symbols either to explain, exemplify, or otherwise signify the ideas or values that they want to share. So I would say, as I fill in the gaps in my beliefs, as we were saying before, I frequently see symbols in a new light. I, for the first time, recognize something I hadn't seen or heard before. There are also times when an explanation I received before suddenly made a lot more sense to me. And so I saw something not new, but I saw it more fully or more clearly than I had before. So even when I think I understand a symbol, there are times when I realize either a greater depth or an additional component to my understanding.
You mentioned that sometimes an old explanation suddenly clicks with more depth or a new component appears. Can you give an example of how your understanding of a specific symbol has evolved?
Yeah, I'll stick with the square and compass, since everybody, Freemason or otherwise, is familiar with that. The square and compasses are ancient symbols. The square represented the earth, which was believed not only to be flat, but rectangular, which gives us expressions like the four corners of the globe, etc. And the compass, or compasses as they're more properly called, is a tool for drawing arcs and circles. That made it an excellent symbol of heaven, which was imagined to be in the sky and seemed to form a dome over the earth. So the square and compasses are symbols of earth and heaven. I knew that when I was first initiated, and I think a lot of people do. As my understanding changed, however, heaven became a symbol for the ideal, and earth became a symbol of physical reality. And the same development applied to the compass and square. They became symbols of the ideal and the real, soul and body, energy and matter, etc. One which I focus on in my book is potential and reality, because Freemasonry is, in a very practical, not mystical, not spiritual, not esoteric way, about seeing potential in ourselves and others and making it reality. That's growth, that's development, that's self-improvement.
Most people see the square and compasses as a logo on a ring. You are describing them as symbols of what you could be and what you are. How do you keep the potential from being just a daydream? And the reality from being a prison?
Well, you have to approach each of them differently. Both are expressions of the truth. Potential is the truth as it could be in the future. Reality is the truth as it is now. With reality, you should start with nothing and add facts as you find evidence for them. So discard your prejudices, your hopes, your preconceived notions, and build your beliefs from the ground up. Start at zero and add ideas as you discover more truth. But with the ideal, you're trying to imagine the greatest truth possible. And so the approach is the opposite. You start with infinity and you eliminate ideas as you find evidence against them. So imagine all that could be possible and build your beliefs from the top down, starting with perfection and coming to earth as you discover more truth. So this way you avoid decorating reality with fantasy. The areas which need improvement are easy to see, and there's a better chance of bringing higher potential into reality. And then on the other hand, you also leave room for the highest potential. So you always have something to aim for, and the quest to continually perfect ourselves continues for our whole life.
This has been an illuminating session.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. All right. Ciao.
This has been The Beginning is Wisdom with host Peter Cardilla. Please tune in next week and every week for more fun and information. For more, go to beginningiswisdom.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. The opinions herein expressed are those of Mr. Cardilla and do not reflect or suggest an endorsement of these views by show sponsors or any body of Freemasonry.
Hey, don't tell John in Florida. I want you to buy the book. And if you use the coupon code Don't Tell John, I'll give you 30% off at beginningiswisdom.com. Don't tell John.